Hello, everybody. Josh Neighbors here, Locked On Big 12 podcast. Joining us today from SiriusXM, it is my colleague and friend, Robbie Triano. Robbie, I didn't know what I was doing today for my show. And then Robbie tweeted out some takes that are excellent spring football takes that I think you all have to hear. It's going to bring up some interesting conversation points. And one of them is Kansas not finishing last. So we'll get to all of Robbie's takes right after this.
Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so oftentimes what Robbie and I do when we're thinking about like topics for our show, so Robbie's show is 2 hours every single day, so much longer than mine is. But sometimes when Robbie's out, I am the one thinking of topics. And so Robbie and I will get these Big 12 thoughts in our head that sometimes just like, you know what, we got to tweet this stuff out. You know, it just comes to our mind. We got to tweet it out. So Robbie, I'm assuming you were preparing for the show today, and this is why you had a tweet full of takes.
Yeah, so this is the last week of spring football in the Big 12. Each team will play their games, or they just won't have a game. But this is the final week where we can actually have spring practice. And I was thinking, like, damn, like we've gone through this whole spring, and I haven't really made a bold take yet about some teams. And I felt like it was time to actually put some things on paper. So later in the year, I can look really smart in this season, or I can just hit delete if none of these things come true. But it felt like now is the time to finally put some thoughts together. Like, I don't know what more I can really see this spring, right, where I can will drastically change my mind. So I'm just putting things on paper now.
All right, so here it is. So the takes were the Adrian Martinez experience will work. I like how you put the trademark there, the copyright there.
Yes, that is mine.
If you guys can't see, also if you're not watching on YouTube, make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube. It's a great way to watch the show. We got the graphic up right now so you guys can see these things. But if you're listening via audio, the Adrian Martinez experience will work for KSU. Kansas will not finish last in last place. Texas Tech will have an all Big 12 QB, and that there's two all Big 12 teams. The Big 12 title, will be a 3-team race between OU, Baylor, and Texas. All right, so we're going to start with the first take, okay? And this is the Adrian Martinez experience. It will work. So I want to preface by saying this. I'm not an Adrian Martinez guy. I've been on record saying I can't wait to bet against him. But I think there are a couple factors that are in your corner, and I want to know if this is what you were thinking, Robbie. They return a lot of their production from last year. Like, they've got basically all of their good pass catchers, are back. They've got a star and Deuce Vaughn back. The offensive line's got some questions. This is a slow offense, right? So, they actually hit a bunch of big plays last year, which is not what we were thinking, but they've got some guys who are big play guys. It's interesting, but like, this is an offense that's focused on taking care of the football. So, there are less opportunities for him to mess up. That's another good thing that's going to happen as well. And this is, Colin Klein, who people really seem to like as an offensive coordinator now, who also kind of knows what it looks like to succeed as a quarterback at Kansas State. Another thing in your corner. So am I on the right path here about why you think this will work?
Yeah, I think you've hit most of the major pieces. The one that I am the most intrigued with, and there's a lot of new offensive coordinators in this conference that I'm intrigued on. Zach Kittley at Texas Tech, we'll probably talk about later, and Colin Klein. And this is just a fascinating, type of, we know who Colin Klein as the player was, and Adrian Martinez definitely does not have the same amount of production as him, but I would consider them similar body types or similar types of quarterbacks where they have no problem being aggressive and running the football. And I feel like those two pairing together is going to be a nice marriage for Kansas State. I think in this league, when we look at the defenses in the Big 12, we're seeing how they are somewhat stopping the pass better. But last year's run defenses in the Big 12 were not necessarily great. And I kind of think that is going to continue with a lot of the pieces that we consider the best defensive players in the Big 12 are now gone. Like Malcolm Rodriguez, Jalen Petrie, Terrell Bernard, anyone on Oklahoma, really. So this is a year with Adrian Martinez and a league that is somewhat really down at quarterback that I just believe what is happening there. I believe the pieces around him where he doesn't necessarily have to do what he did at Nebraska and be the person who takes the load, like takes all of it. So I think that Adrian Martinez is really in a perfect situation for him. And for Kansas State, that is the quarterback that has given them success in past years. So I'm all aboard it. Obviously, I wish we got to see it in the spring. He is out with an injury. They
Well,
had
I
to
mean, they
rely.
can't even have a spring game regardless, right? Because they're so short on guys.
Yeah, so they are very short on guys. If you don't know that news, they only have one defensive lineman healthy right now for Kansas State. That's not great. They were working a long snapper at the defensive line during
Yeah,
practices at points. That's not ideal.
no.
But when it comes to the Kansas State offense, I think it's going to be one of the best in the league. Obviously, with any team that has Deuce Vaughn is going to be fantastic. But I just think this is a great pairing with Adrian Martinez and Colin Klein, and what exactly is the prototypical Kansas State quarterback.
I will say this. I think it's also really good that he left Nebraska. Like that I feel like it was so toxic in the sense of this guy has a problem, right? And this team also, the greatest 3-9 team of all time. They
Right.
invent ways to lose games. Like just separating yourself from that has got to be positive. And I will say this: like, how many times do we see Kansas State come out on the right side of those games? Often, right? Like the games that the way that Kansas State usually gets to 8-4, or the good years 9-3, or maintain 7-5 is in close contests they pull it out, right? They find ways to to get wins, or they good example, the Stanford game last year, like they never let that thing come close to getting away from them. They managed the game well. Oklahoma game, right, when they play a superior team, they managed the number of possessions well. They couldn't stop Oklahoma, but they were right there at the very end of the game with Oklahoma. And so I think it's all those points are well taken. My question to you is, what constitutes success? Like, a top three scoring offense? Is it a number of wins? Is it a yards per play? Or is it just like one of those things like, look, we'll kind of see it. We'll kind of know it if we see it, that Adrian Martinez thing is working out.
It's a difficult question because for me, success for Adrian Martinez, I think it is making them one of the best offenses in the Big 12, but also, can he be an NFL quarterback? Can we see him being drafted in the NFL? Can we take him and put him there? I don't think so. But for me, this experience is the thing that I have had the most difficult time, putting a lot of praise into Kansas State, is that I can never put them in the top tier in the Big 12. They just haven't earned anything to do that. I think they're a team that is incredibly scrappy. I think that no team wants to face Kansas State in this conference, and they've gone to bowl games, so they've had success. But when it comes to can they make that next step to jump into the next tier, I think that Adrian Martinez is a quarterback that can do that. Skylar Thompson was also very good and could do that,
Right.
but it was with the pieces around him. And now that we're seeing a veteran Deuce Vaughn, we're seeing consistency and not a lot of turnover on this team. For me, what is successful for the Adrian Martinez experience is if they can actually emerge as a top 4 team in the Big 12. And if this offense is something that can actually, every single time they have the ball, it's a threat to score. So for me, I expect this Adrian Martinez experience to elevate Kansas State into an actual team that can, I don't know if it's stretched to say compete for a Big 12 title, but at least, by the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season,
Still in the conversation, right? They're not out of the hunt. It's
Right.
like, hey, a lot's got to happen for Kansas State, but it's still feasible. I think the same thing too, just because this league feels open. We'll get to your, who's in the race thing in a little bit, but I think it's a good point. I think it's a very well taken point. I'm starting to come around a bit more on Martinez, just because thinking about it, like I really like Malik Knowles. I really like Phil Brooks. Also, it's funny enough, I always hear that name and I think of CM Punk. That's CM Punk's name. But the thing, like they've got legitimate dudes. So it's going to be a team that's got a chance to be good. But once again, like it could go wrong with him, right?
Right.
Are they in tight games because of low number of possessions where he's making mistakes in the end?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is the turnover thing. But I think a lot of the load will be taken off him. The thing that worries me about that team, if they have players go down, I don't think they have the depth or talent to beat Oklahoma or Baylor or Texas. So that's my biggest worry about Kansas State. But right now, I think you should be a little optimistic about your quarterback.
Fair enough. Number 2, Kansas will not finish last. So, Robbie, I was looking at the schedule here. I'm not going to read it for everybody. I found 2 games in which I believe Kansas will be favored. That'll be home against Tennessee and Tennessee Tech, first week of the season. They didn't have West Virginia away. This is their non-conference. West Virginia's conference, but the non-conference is Tennessee Tech, away at Houston, home for Duke. I think Duke, they're favored. I think at home against Duke, they might get favored first year of totally forgetting the new coach. Tony Elliott. Tony Elliott, new coach at Duke. So first year there. Or was it Mike Elko's job? I'm totally blanking now on who. Oh no, Mike Elko. Mike Elko. Yeah, Mike Elko went and took that job at Duke. So that one, but their Big 12 schedule, as friend of the show, both shows, Big 12 Today and Locked On Big 12 podcast, Shahan Jayaraja pointed out, like their conference schedule, man, they're not doing many favors. Their road games, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Baylor, Lubbock, and K-State, so their rivalry game. And then the home games for them, Iowa State, TCU, Oklahoma State, Texas. Now, you might say, hey, you can catch a couple of those teams. But, Robbie, I'm thinking, like, who finishes behind them? Do you have a team in mind, or are you just like, they're not going to finish last?
So for Kansas, I think for them, in a league that is so down in quarterback, I think they have 2 players that can actually make plays, and that is Jason Bean and Jalen Daniels. Who starts, that's fine. I think they have a good running back core with Devin Neal and also Kai Thomas. I just have a lot of faith in this team to not be as bad as we think. And there's also some teams in the conference I'm just not particularly high on. And what I kind of like about their schedule is that their second game of the year is at West Virginia. That is a team that I do not have a whole lot of faith in. Yes, we can say JT Daniels is going to elevate this program, and they have all these returning players. I do not like what I watch out of this team so far, and the fact that it's week 2, and JT Daniels didn't play any spring ball whatsoever. This is a player who is still in school at Georgia right now. That's a team I think that is going to take a while to get ramped up, and also their start of the year is somewhat brutal for them. And then after that, they play Iowa State, who I have no idea what this Iowa State team is going to be. And I have I see a lot of people making takes like, oh, they're going to have a better season than last year, this year. It's like, what is making you say that? I don't know what their quarterback situation is. I don't know any of their key players. I know Xavier Hutchinson is there.
And what we thought came back to.
Right, but it's like most of these players, like the players that are amazing, are gone.
Yeah.
So I don't know how anyone can fully say Iowa State is going to be a better team. That is just faith in Matt Campbell, and sure. And then the game after that in the conference is home against TCU, which is a team I also don't know what they're going to look like. And that defense is, I think, probably going to be one of the worst in the conference just because I don't know who's going to play. So for me, I think this is a nice ramp to their season. And when it comes to the teams that I think could be in the bottom of the conference, I have TCU, I have West Virginia, and Iowa State. Do I know which one is going to finish 10th? No, but for me, I think Kansas is a team that is incredibly well coached, that has a lot more talent than a usual Kansas team is. Am I putting a lot more stock early? Probably. I think if we had this conversation in a year, I could say this and people won't think I'm crazy. But for me, I really do believe that this is a good team. I think they have some weapons, and the start of their season is kind of I would say it's optimal for them.
I think the problem for them is last year they caught the good teams later on, right? Like Texas was good to catch late. They played close with West Virginia, another good team to catch late. TCU, another good team to catch late, right? If you flip it, sure, you can say, okay, I don't know what West Virginia's going to be. It might be better to catch them early. But the problem is I don't see who they're going to catch late. November, it's Oklahoma State, away Texas Tech, home Texas at Kansas State. So the thing would be for me is like if you don't pull the West Virginia upset, which is on the road, and if you don't pull the TCU upset, I don't know where the win comes from in November, like last year, to kind of turn something on somebody's head. Now, look, some of those teams could suck down the backstretch of the season. I don't, those teams don't feel like ones that are the teams you want to catch at this point. Now, Kansas State might be a prime candidate if that could actually be if the first take goes wrong for you, Robbie. Take 2 could take advantage of take number 1. But I just think for me, it gets to the point of what actually means success for Kansas, right? Like you won 2 games last year. Yeah, it's 2 games. Yeah. But to me, like if you went 2-10 again, and you were much more competitive, you might not be pleased, but like doesn't mean it wasn't progress. I would say the goal is 3 wins. They get 3 wins against the schedule, right? And you beat because you only have 1 game against a non-Power 5 team, right? And Houston, obviously not Power 5, but they're coming to Power 5. They won 13 games last year, so Power 5 level team. You got 1 game against an opponent like that. If you take 3 from Power 5 level opponents or teams, I think that's success. So I think we always got to be careful about like what means success. I do think the good thing for KU football fans is, I think they're a bit more understanding of what means success at KU, and 3 wins this year would definitely be progress from 2 last year. Like that is notable, but I think this is more of like, what does this look like in a real year 0 kind of in a way, or year 0.5, I guess you could say for Lance Leipold.
Yeah. So I guess part of it too is I was in preparing for this. I watched a lot of the games, a lot of the clips of last year's Kansas team, and I specifically focused on this Oklahoma game, which they almost won. And
Yes.
that is a team that looked together. And when I looked at Les Miles' teams, none of them looked together. This team, like they were competent running the football. And I don't know if it's Jalen Daniels or Jason Bean. I like either. But when I look at this team, I think they're very much together. And now that they had an early spring, so their spring game was April 9th. And I look at teams like Texas Tech and TCU and with first-year head coaches, and I'm like, I want to believe in those teams, but
Right.
could they get caught by Kansas? And honestly, I think that could definitely happen. Do I think Texas is going to lose to Kansas again? No. And I think if that
Right.
happens, I think like Steve Sarkisian will just like Crystal Conte will just go to the field and just like
Fire him.
hand him papers and just like, all
yes.
right, bye. Like I see my mentions every day, and every time I open my mentions, it's something about the Kansas beating us. So I don't think
Right.
that's going to happen again. But I just have a lot more faith that this team, with an off season, with some key like players back, and kind of this culture being created by Lance Leipold, who I think is one hell of a coach. I think that this team is not going to obviously be a top of the Big 12, but I think they're going to stun a lot of teams in this conference this year.
And also, I would say the one thing that really does help your argument is like the difference between the end of the year and the beginning of the year was finishing games, right? Close game against Coastal, they get blown out in the second half. Actually, they got outscored by South Dakota in the second half of the game that they won. The Duke game, pretty close game. Actually, I think they were winning at halftime. It was a close game. They got blown out in the second half. TCU, West Virginia, even the Oklahoma game, right? Like there were a couple of times like where I said to myself, that's the knockout punch. That's it. And Kansas like, no, we're not done, actually. And the Texas game, they finished too. That's the big key, right? Are you finishing games the way you did last year? Because, yeah, then you'll be able to catch some people. But I think it's a huge conversation point of what success looks like this year for KU. All right, one quick word from our sponsors. Today's show is brought to you by BetOnline and BetOnline.net. They will have the over-under win totals for us on these Big 12 teams coming up very soon. Can't wait to see what those will be. Love hammering those. And I'll give you guys my picks for those coming up. Texas over. That's what we're feeling so far this year. We'll get to more on them later, but you guys can bet on basketball, NBA playoffs, NFL draft, F1, NASCAR, boxing, UFC, golf, whatever you guys want. They've got at BetOnline and BetOnline.net today. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, so Robbie, this one, take number 3, ties into a big theme, what we're doing right now on Locked On Big 12. Next couple of days, really going to focus on these quarterbacks. I think it's down year for quarterbacks. I would say maybe potentially in terms of a known quantity, right? These guys there's question marks for every single quarterback position, right? If not a question, it's a battle, right? Sometimes the question is not just for a player, it's which player will it be? You say Texas Tech will have a QB on an all Big 12 team. There are 2 all Big 12 teams last year, all Big 12 on the first team, I believe. I think Spencer Sanders, right? Was he first
Spencer
team?
Sanders,
yeah. And then second team, you got, I think Caleb Williams ended up getting on. I have to double check on this. But those, so now you think about, okay, who are the guys competing for this Texas Tech job, first of all? Donovan Smith, Baron Morton, and then totally blanking on the third guy's
Tyler
name.
Shough.
Yeah, Tyler Shough, right? And he was good some last year. We didn't see a ton of him. Gets hurt in that Texas game. We don't see him the rest of the way. So to me, it's like, okay, I see where you're coming from, but then I list the names. Sanders, well, he's not great as a returning all Big 12 guy. Dylan Gabriel, to me, at Oklahoma is set up for success. Quinn Ewers is a mega, mega talent, right? And we have to factor that in. Whoever takes the Baylor job might be in a position to relatively succeed because of how good that team is. JT Daniels is a really talented player. Haven't seen much of him, right? But really talented player. So a lot of stuff, in my opinion, has to go right. Now, I'm not saying it's totally impossible. My one thing is, though, like guessing which two guys are going to end up on the team. I mean, I feel like right now at this point, you just go the safe way and just say Ewers and Gabriel. But you think whoever wins this job will be in a position to succeed. Do you think it matters which guy it is? Did you have somebody in mind when you made this take?
So a lot of people are penciling Tyler Shough to be in the starting quarterback. And I mean, like he's good. I will say he's good. I love Donovan Smith. I think what he did last year in the bowl game against Mississippi State, I'm high off that Kool-Aid. I think he is an not elite. That's a stretch.
No, but he's got good traits.
I think he is incredibly talented. And what I see, whatever quarterback in Zach Hitley's offense is going to be fantastic. And I think what made Spencer Sanders win last year was, I think that was a very bad year of quarterbacking in this conference. And that was a year where I don't think anyone had very good statistical numbers. And I think in a Zach Hitley offense, they're going to have a lot of great numbers. So the reason I think Spencer Sanders won is he was on the best team. He was the quarterback. And I mean, like it was a run heavy league last year. So like whoever, like the fact that he won quarterback, the best first team quarterback. Okay, whatever. So for this year, I think that whoever is the starting quarterback there is going to be fantastic. And I think they have a good running back room. Sherrod Thompson, Taj Brooks. Obviously, they're missing Eric Azukama, but I think they're going to be just fine when it comes to receiving core. And I just really trust what is happening there. And I'm mostly just very down on the rest of the quarterbacks in the Big 12. And will it bite me in the butt if Tyler Shough is starting and then they switch to Donovan Smith? Yeah, that'll definitely bite me in the butt. But right now, I have Donovan Smith. That is my quarterback right now. And I think this is going to be probably, besides Quinn Ewers, the most intrigued I am in a quarterback competition in the Big 12. But I just fully believe in the offense that they're running there in Texas Tech.
Well, I like to note from last year, you make a point about Donovan Smith for Texas Tech. And, this is a guy that last year I thought had one of the best games we saw all season out of a Big 12 quarterback. I mean, he had a couple of really nice games, but the one that sticks out, I think, in everybody's mind, you have to go to the Iowa State game, the 41-38 win where he was 25 or 32, 3 touchdowns. It did have an interception that game, but this is a guy, completing 78% of his passes in that game, showed what he's got. Now, look, he had a rough game the next time out against Oklahoma State, but had a nice game against Baylor in a game that was very close down the stretch. I'm with you. I think the nice thing is, we're talking about Texas Tech football and can they get back to a certain standard or whatever. The talent they've got right now at quarterback, I think about the National Football League and would I rather have Graham Harrell, Tyler Shough, or Donovan Smith as an NFL prospect? Right. It's like I think Graham Harrell's probably number 3, right? People talk about Tyler Shough as a prospect in NFL. I mean, you and I talked about it last year. I brought this up to you. He had the 7th best odds to be the number 1 pick in this year's draft.
Yeah.
When the season started, the 7th best odds. Now, look, I know some of that stuff is different, but I bet a lot of people saw that list and say, who's Tyler Shough? Exactly. But if he's on that list, there's a reason why. It's because they know NFL people like that kind of player. Donovan Smith, what he gives you, 6'5", 230. Wow. Quarterbacks with big frames who can move around. Sounds like Josh Allen. Sounds like Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think you're too, in terms of what guy can end up being a really good NFL quarterback, or, hey, if I had to pick quarterbacks, right now that might have the best NFL career, Shough and Smith might be the 2 guys I'm saying, yeah, I think those are the guys that, alongside Quinn Ewers maybe, that have the best chance to do it because of their physical tools. The good news for Texas Tech, Both of them are on the team, and both of them are options. Now, we're hitting that period where, Robbie, we could look like idiots here in 2 weeks. And we might see Donovan Smith enters transfer portal. And you and I will be like,
Yeah.
no, please.
Damn. But
Gosh
even
darn it.
so, if it is Tyler Shough, I do believe in what is
Right.
happening there. So that's why I'm just banking on just like the quarterback room as a whole.
Yeah.
And can I give some credit to Matt Wells? Joey McGuire is inheriting a pretty damn good team. I think he is taking on a team that's not as much of a project as
Yes.
some people want to think. Like when I watched that bowl game against Mississippi State, I was like, there are some damn
They
good
beat their
players out there.
ass in a
And
game where Mississippi State wanted to win, too.
yeah, like Mike Leach against his former team. Yeah, he wants to.
Yes.
So I think that Joey McGuire is in a good spot. I think he's being handed. I mean, he's being handed a bowl team. Like it's not like he's a complete rebuild, and he's being handed a great quarterback room. And when it comes to this league and quarterbacks, like I think it honestly might be one of the best rooms, like in the Big 12. You may be like, oh, that's crazy. It's like Oklahoma. If Dylan Gabriel goes down, they're relying on a freshman. If Gary Bohanna goes down for Baylor, they have Blake Shapen, so that is good. But
are we sure Gary Bohannon's even good? Like,
yeah.
I mean,
I was very
think
high on him
it's
last
best,
year, but
it's the best quarterback room in the Big 12. It is.
So I'm high on them.
All right, this is the third one. This one, not controversial. I'm actually in lockstep with this. Maybe the Baylor one, I don't 100% know, but I think they're well positioned. Big 12 race will be between OU, Baylor, and Texas. Robbie, first of all, how much money is your NIL deal with Baylor? I know that you are the biggest Baylor fan out there. Look, I think to me, you know, I've heard people say Shapen's got an outside shot to win the job. Like, I think with Gary Bohannon, if they take him as the quarterback this year, I'm pretty confident I know how this ends up. Probably 7-5, 8-4 at best.
Right.
Shapen or Drones. People, I've heard Kyron Drones. People are liking the way he's looked too. That's the key to me. They got to go with the guy who gives them more upside. Robbie, that Ole Miss game, I know it's a bowl game. Bohannon against Ole Miss. You could say he was hurt, whatever. Horrific. At times against Texas, absolutely horrific. There was a reason why people said, well, didn't turn the ball over early in the season. It's because they were trying to protect him, it seems like, because he made some really bad decisions down the back stretch of the season. So how do you feel about my take that quarterback is the thing that's going to it's going to determine, hey, is this Baylor team competing for the title, or can they do it with average quarterback play again, do you think?
So them not having Abram Smith, if they had Abram Smith, I'd be like, you know what? You just need to have a quarterback. But, I mean, I think he was so unappreciated last year. Like, for me in football, my favorite NFL player was Marshawn Lynch. And my favorite player right now is Derrick Henry. I love a big bruising running back, and that's what Abram Smith was. So without him, there's a lot of question marks when it comes to this offense of Baylor, and I'm pretty nervous about that. They're losing a lot of wide receivers. Like, that is the one thing that I am very nervous on. And running back, they lose Abram Smith and Treston Ebner. So that is my main concern. But on the line of scrimmage, Baylor is loaded. Mm-hmm. They are returning their entire offensive line. They have Apuika. They have Jackson Player. Obviously, we need to decide on what is being replaced for Jalen Petrie and Terrell Bernard. But when it comes to line of scrimmage, like, I fully believe that that's where games are won and lost, and especially in college football. And this is a team that I'm high on when it comes to that. And for a quarterback, I like Blake Shapen. I thought that Gary Bohannon did his job last year, but Blake Shapen in the Big 12 title game proved to be a competent quarterback. So I think they're going to be just fine in there. And in a league where I feel like you just need to be average to win, as in what happened last year, I think that they're going to be fine on the quarterback front. I am worried about their skill players, but I believe the rest of it is strong enough where I think they're going to get either a player in the portal when it comes to wide receiver, or someone's going to step up.
Well, and the thing is, the scary part too is people keep telling us how much they like the Baylor receivers, right? Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, we really like these guys, which means, maybe it's a bigger loss than we even thought as we head in next year. I will say this: you and I are very lucky the fact that we get to work with linemen. The two main football people we work with are Justin Voracek, Gabe Eichert. And, getting to, they're not just saying the game is won with blocking and tackling. Like, it's so evident. It is so evident. The reason why Baylor sucked in 2020, their line was bad. Their defense was always in the field. It might have been a good defense. Who knows? They were on the field the entire time. Last year, they did a good job scheming stuff up to take care of the football, to keep the defense off the field, and let those guys succeed. And when it comes to blocking and tackling, like fundamentally wise, there might be a talent gap between Baylor and Texas, but Texas might have more talent. But when it was on the field, fundamentals, who's getting those things done? Baylor. Last year against Oklahoma, Robbie, that game was more of an ass kicking than people remember.
Oh yeah.
Who was dominating the line of scrimmage? Baylor. It didn't matter which 5-star quarterback Oklahoma put in. And that's the one thing I think is sometimes I'm worried about. I think about, Dave Aranda, am I buying in too much? Like, no, this defense will be good. The question is, will the offense be able to allow the defense to play defense and not just be on, to save their ass all the time? That's the big question. Let's talk about Texas, because Oklahoma. Let's do Oklahoma first. Texas is the big wild card. OU. You might be down on them. Have you changed your tone? I know you were down on OU, but have you changed your tone at all? Do you feel like OU? I feel like I can pencil them in for one of those 2 title game spots. I know it sounds crazy. I feel like that. I'm really confident in what they've got this year, and their schedule's easy.
I'm more worried about their defense than anything, just because I don't know who is going to step up for them. Offensively, I think they're going to be just fine, and obviously with Jeff Lebby, they do have players: Theo Weiss, Drake Stoops, Marvin Mims. Running back wise, I think they're going to miss Kenny Brooks, but Eric Gray is a player who can make plays, and then Marcus Major as well. So this is a team that, offensively, I think is going to be just fine. And obviously, if they're in the SEC, I don't think we'd be having this conversation, but it is the Big 12, and there are some games that are just easier than others. So this is a team that, I was very down on them when all of these things happened, and I give them a lot of credit for filling in some holes. Obviously, hiring Brent Venables, getting Jeff Lebby, those are moves that you need to make, and they made those. So it makes the loss of Lincoln Riley a little easier, and the players that they lost. My biggest gripe with Oklahoma is their fans. This has nothing to do with their team. But
don't let the fans affect your opinion of the team, Robbie. I can see it; it's seeping in there.
I just can't. I just have a really difficult time with them, because when Lincoln Riley was there, it's we have the coach that is going to be great, and our success is based on this coach. We're so lucky to have him. His offenses are dynamic, and when it comes to Alex Grinch, it's you know what? He's going to be a head coach one day. He's a brilliant defensive mind, and we have all of these great players. And as soon as they leave, it's oh, Alex Grinch, he set them up for failure.
We're better off without him.
And it's oh, Lincoln Riley, you know what? His plays were too complicated, and all of these things. And it's what do OU fans really believe? Because it seems like as soon as they left the door, they just wanted to kick him square in the ass. And I just don't.
That's fair. Well, here's what I'll counter, Robbie, because I have no skin in the game. I mean, honestly, if anything, I might have some anti-OU sentiment because we hear about them so much, but they deserve it. They dominated the league. I think in terms of a team transitioning to the SEC, Venables is a better coach for them, because what was their problem? Flashy offense, great fun. Teams are whipping your tails up front. And that's the problem is I remember going to that Peach Bowl against LSU. It looked like the guys were it was, water against the wall, just hitting the wall, and it just didn't work. It didn't matter. The wall's not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. And they haven't, we heard last year they had guys up front. It was going to happen for them. They have the right kind of dudes up front. Okay, it didn't manifest itself. This is a guy, Brent Venables, who's done, number one, he's recruited those guys from the Southeast. He's won those battles. He's put against SEC schools. He's put those guys in the league, and he's put up really good defensive lines that have held up in elite situations. Now the big problem for him is Jeff Lebby. If he's, this is a weird thing to say. If he's lucky, the Baylor stink follows Jeff Lebby around, and he gets to keep him for a while. Because I think it's turned out, we're at a point now where Jeff Lebby's probably going to keep putting out good offenses, and it's just going to be a matter of, does somebody want to take a chance on a guy who's got the Baylor stink on him? So I think the biggest challenge I'm more worried about how he's going to keep doing the offense thing. Because I think this is the right guy in terms of type of talent in the spots where we see, wow, Lincoln Riley's team just gets bum rushed again because they don't have the athletes on the lines to get this thing done. So I understand your sentiment of being we didn't want him. We're better off without him. Mm-hmm. No, this was a guy who was supposed to be your coach until he took the Cowboys job, right? Yeah. That was supposed to be how this thing worked. But I think there is a certain idea to, this team right now could probably win the Big 12. Could they compete for a title? Probably not. But in the long term, when I'm going to a new league, a league it's all about line play. I want that guy who knows not only the OU culture, but knows the culture of where he's going to be or the way how you win in the place he's going to be. So I understand your frustration.
Yeah.
I just think
No, and I believe that
right
he's
guy.
going to be the right coach for that transition. I just don't understand now, when it comes to spring football, like when optimism is thrown out, I think it's kind of bullshit, because when I look at people talking about Oklahoma, it's like, oh, it's completely different there. It's like, yeah, that's completely different every time you have a new head coach. It's completely different for Texas Tech. It's completely different for TCU. And when I hear these things, it's like, of course, everyone is going to say all of the right things. It's because they get to control the narrative. It's not like OU spring football is playing Texas spring football, and then you could be like, oh, they were bad at that end. I feel like in this time, it's only optimism. And I'm just really curious what exactly this looks like on the field, because it is a complete culture change in this short amount of time. And yeah, that's great. And I think it's going to work in the long term, but like they are replacing a lot of holes. They are putting in a new quarterback, a completely new system, changing everything. And it's just like, it's great to have this optimism. I just want to see it. I really just want to see it on the field. I want to see them play Nebraska, which is a game that was close last year. I think Nebraska is going to be better this year. So it's just like, I just want to see it. I'm tired. Let me just fast forward through this year, because I'm tired of OU people saying, oh, it's so much better. It's like, it's better for every new team with a new coach, unless it's Les Miles. Then it's
It's not better. Let's get to the Texas, and I think it's a good way to transition this. I think OU and Texas this year are what Baylor and Kansas were this year in basketball. Here's my comp. Baylor, to start off, was better organized. They were coming off a title. They were clearly equipped to handle struggles, right? Injuries, whatnot. But in the end of the day, they just did not have the talent, in my opinion. Now you say, "Oh, Sohan, Kendall Brown," yeah, but like it's not developed talent at all, right? Like it's not. We think it is. Bijan Robinson and Quinn Ewers, in terms of talent, pound for pound talent, might be the best backfield in America in terms of like just these guys they're both awesome players. Well, one was awesome talent. And I think the Kansas comp is, I kept saying all year, if Kansas puts it together, that's the best team in the Big 12, because nobody's got a Dave McCormick. Nobody's got no Shia Abaji. Nobody has guys like Christian Brown as a third player. Look at this offense. Nobody in this league has a Quinn Ewers, a Bijan Robinson, a Xavier Worthy, Xavier Worthy to me is one of the best wide receivers in the country. Oh, yeah. They treated him last year like he was Devontae Smith. That was his role in the offense. He nearly had 1,000 yards. He should have gotten 1,000 yards. It wasn't his fault. They got the Nair kid, Isaiah Nair, coming in as well. Julio Billingsley, and they're going to get maybe Jai Hall too, who's looking now. These guys all have some personality stuff they got to make sure they work through. But like in terms of talent, good Lord, if they put this thing together, I think this is a team that's going to be horrifying. And Robbie, I think it might end up them being like 9-3, 10-2, but they're that 9-3, 10-2 team at the end of the year. It's like, this is playing like a top 5 team. This is, if an expanded playoff situation, this is the team that nobody wants to play.
Yeah, it's really difficult gauging this team every year, because I feel like a lot of people are just tired of being burned when it comes to talking about the Texas Longhorns, because I feel myself also drinking the Kool-Aid, because it's like, if there's a team with the highest ceiling in the Big 12, I think it has to be the Texas Longhorns. I think it has to be. Like when it comes to what they have on offense, like they have NFL players for once on this offense. And like, definitely that is great. And when it comes to the defense, their defense was awful last year. And when I look at this year, like they have to be better. And on the line of scrimmage, I feel like they are. They have Moro Ojomo. They have Keandre Coburn. They have Alfred Collins. They have players returning back. Like, this is a team that, like, I find myself, like, really scared to say they're going to be really good, because I just know I'm going to get burned at some point. And, like, the fact that they have to play Alabama is terrifying for Texas, because, like, I mean, I'm just going to pencil a loss for them. But it's a team that I feel like if everything goes right, like it would be ridiculous to say it's not a Big 12 championship team. But that is the biggest problem with Texas, because they have the talent every year and it doesn't match. There needs to be some type of like show or like some type of FBI case to investigate why the hell this team doesn't win.
It feels like conditioning, right? It feels like they just will. I mean, it felt. I know it sounds simple to say, but like they just sucked in second halves.
Right.
And it's like, how do we change this? Is it strength and conditioning? Is it a mental thing? But it's like you could point to where, okay, this is where it went wrong. You're getting pushed around third and fourth quarter. OU, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas. Like take your pick.
Yeah.
Leighton
I feel they just got gassed. Like at the end of games, they just like really got gassed, and
on both lines too.
Yeah. Like I think that honestly in year two, I believe in Sark. I'll just say I'm a Sark believer.
Yeah,
I think that this thing is going to work offensively. I think it's going to be fantastic to watch. And it's an interesting conversation. Who is more set up for the transition to the SEC, OU or Texas? And I think honestly, both are in good hands. I don't want to make a choice. I think both are in good hands right now.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't know what Quinn Ewers is going to look like. Like, I believe it's just a lot of hype right now. So that part does scare me a bit. But on paper and what they have right now, I mean, like, they have a proven talent in Bijan Robinson. I think that alone is enough to put you in the conversation.
Right. I think it's, it's such dealing with all the stuff that being a Texas head coach comes with is so challenging.
Oh God.
And I just, I don't know how to say, hey, who's the right person to deal with it? Like, is there a right way to deal with all that? Because I thought about the last week, and look, we talked about, the comments that Ajomo made, and I don't think Sark necessarily handled that well, but at some point he's like, man, monkeys biting people, videos of coaches undressing players, kids talking about, and some of the stuff's good, some of the stuff's bad, and then being top 10 in the FPI, and it's just like, man, why can't we just focus on football? That part of it, I think, to me, is the hardest part for them, because they've got so much talent. We saw them really stick it to every, they stuck it to every team in this league at some point, right? They were sticking it to Oklahoma State. They were sticking it to Oklahoma. They were taking it to Baylor for a little bit too. Like, they did that. And then everything just swung at some point in the game. You're like, okay, how do we get from point A to point B? We've got the talent. That's what he has to figure out. And while he's doing that, he's got to put the earmuffs on too and drown out all the noise. So that's what makes it a bit more complicated than just like, you've got the talent, make it work.
Yeah, I think that is one of the hardest jobs in America just because of that.
And Auburn.
Yeah. And I'm like really happy Morojomo said the things he did. And like, I can understand just a tiny bit why Sark is mad. It's just like, dude, why are you blasting that? But it's just like, Texas to me is a fascinating look at what NIL will do for your players when it comes to mentality, because like I look at Texas's offensive line and they had one of the best recruiting classes when it comes to that in the country. Imagine being a freshman and just coming in with a big ass wad of cash. It's just like, oh my God, I'm away from my parents. There's all of these things. It's like
amazing town.
And I'm rich. And it's just like, I'm really happy that someone like said that on the team, especially a leader. Be like, hey, you think you're a boss now, but like, you're nothing. Like, you're nothing if you don't succeed here. So like, I'm really happy someone said that. And like, people are like, oh, this is going to divide the team. It's like, no, it's not. I really think that this is like a very positive thing now this is out in the open. Because if some player gets caught partying, it's just like, okay, you don't care. So it's like, now it puts a lot of pressures onto the players there to actually be like, you know what, let's actually focus on the football thing. Like, I'm tired of this monkey business, literally, haha. But it's like, why is this happening?
It's like the perfect metaphor, right? It's like legit monkey business.
So
I'm pulling from Bijan Robinson too. Like, great dude. We like I know it's Texas, big bad. It's fun to make fun of. But like, that guy, I mean, you couldn't find a better dude who's as talented as that. He's just like the man.
Yeah. So I'm high in Texas this year, and a lot of people just want to write them out because they're Texas, because they do it every year, and that's fine. I get it; it's warranted. But I think this is going to be a fun little race here in the Big 12.
I think the big question, Robbie, is how does that Alabama game affect them? Right? Like,
oh yeah,
you're probably gonna get your ass kicked. How does that affect you?
What do you think the odds are for them? Like the money line for Texas to win? Do you think it's plus 500? Do you think it's below?
No, because sometimes you get the games where it's a brand, right? Texas plays.
It is home for Texas, so
yeah. Let me see who they play. Well, I mean, that doesn't mean much. That's not a very tough place to go win games. Right. Like, if they beat UL Monroe, but like 60-3, it's going to be like, oh, Alabama better watch out. They got, Texas. So it's gonna depend on that. I would say probably like plus 400. I think it'll be like 350, 400 probably
When do you think a starting quarterback is going to be named too? Like, are we going to be going late? Because I think
they're going to keep that thing. They're going to keep that thing as long as possible because you got Hudson Card who knows the system at least. Now bounced around some, but like they want to keep Card as long as possible. This is Robbie. This is Gardner Minshew versus Trevor Lawrence. This is that fictional crap we had to deal with. It's a competition. No, it's not. You don't take viewers to sit them. It's not how it works.
I just like when we talk about distractions for Texas, it's like if this keeps going on until late August, like who's the starting quarterback? Like it's like God, like
they're just trying to keep Card. I think they're just trying to keep Card. That's all.
I know, but it's like, man, like I think they would just like to settle that and be like, can we just focus on him being our starting quarterback? I don't overthink this. Like there's a reason you got him.
Like, I'm with you on this. It's gonna be, and we didn't even mention like Oklahoma State could easily come up there and have something to say about it this year. Spencer Sanders, my guy, takes the next steps, which we always ask every single year. Robbie, where can people find you and your work and all of its variety, your beautiful tweets, everything from you?
When you're not listening to this and you can't get enough Big 12 hot takes, football, come to SiriusXM Big 12 Radio. We got a lot of great programming for you, a lot of great takes from Josh and myself. Follow me on Twitter at the Triano Kid. You'll hear more takes like this. And let's hope I'm right this season. Let's hope I'm right.
There's some variety there. You might not hit all of them, but you might hit some of them. All right, Robbie, appreciate your time as always, man.
Awesome. Thank you, man.